This podcast is a product of the Florida Academy of Collaborative Professionals. Nothing in this podcast should be considered legal advice. If you or someone you know is looking for a qualified collaborative professional, please visit www.collaborativepracticeflorida.com and the Find Help button to locate a trained collaborative professional in your community. Today on the FACP podcast, we have Anthony Diaz. He's a family law and collaborative divorce attorney and a Florida certified family law mediator. He specializes in resolving disputes easily, effortlessly, better than I say the word, amicably. He's known as the peacemaker. Anthony's been collaboratively trained since 2009. He's taken numerous advanced trainings and collaborated in numerous cases. He was selected as one of 21 participants of the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals Leadership Academy. He is currently co-chair of the Florida Academy of Collaborative Professionals Outreach Committee. In his out-of-court practice, Anthony is known as the peacemaker, as I said, and his down in his name on a Zoom, you can see that. He's passionate in supporting his clients to do divorce differently with many non-litigation options. As a collaborative attorney and mediator, he uses his professional and personal experiences to guide others from pain to peace. So thank you, Anthony, for being here today. And I'd like to know, how did you get involved in the collaborative process?
Sure. Well, I appreciate being here, and it's great to talk to you about that. So, as I was looking at the type of practice I wanted to have, I became a certified mediator and doing a lot of mediations. And in meeting attorneys, a number of them that were involved in the collaborative process suggested that would be something, and encouraged me to take the training because it really aligned with how I see divorce and supporting folks going through a divorce that the litigation process couldn't support. And I was heavily into litigation at that point, and I was really looking for a way to balance my practice and have more of a non-litigation practice. So I took the training with 50 other professionals. It was phenomenal, and it just, from that point on, I realized that out of court is where people need to be to resolve their divorce, and it's just been a great journey and adventure since then.
Can you please explain to those listening why you prefer collaborative versus going to court? What happens in the courtroom? What happens when there's a judge versus in the collaborative process?
Sure, that's a great question, and a lot of folks really don't understand that. So when you're in court in the litigation process, there is one decision maker, and that's the judge. If the spouses can't resolve the case on their own through their attorneys, at the end of the day, the court's going to make a decision, and whether the spouse's parents like it, want to do it, they're going to be ordered to do it. And it's a very unfulfilling experience to not participate in a case that you know so well. With the collaborative process, not only does it empower people to make decisions that line up with their interests, with their children's interest in their goals, the spouse or parents are surrounded by a team, and a team that's specifically selected for this type of case, a financial neutral that is familiar with the issues that the spouse parents are looking at, a mental health facilitator that's selected with the idea in mind of how they can best help the folks resolve this amicably. So not only are you allowing the folks to make a decision on their own, they're able to rely on a team for support, because it's not an easy process, even if you're in the collaborative process. And you know this, Catherine, it doesn't make it easy. It makes it from being too hard, but it's still emotional and difficult. But now you have experts around these folks, and it makes it much more enjoyable. And I want to add one other point. Post divorce, this case has or this experience has a better chance of not coming back to court and not going for modifications, because people have crafted this agreement, and they're most likely more happy with it than not, and it really helps keep any future situations out of court.
And when you're going through the collaborative process, how do you have that control? What's the difference? Explain why and how people are in the decision-making process versus when the judge decides? What happens what happens behind those closed doors in the collaborative process? Reveal the secrets.
Okay, so we're going to pull the curtain back, and we're going to go behind the scenes during a team meeting, and one of the first items as part of the team getting together with these folks is to go over their goals and interests. You know, at the end of the divorce, where do they want to be? What's important to them? And to really get clear, not only to help them get clear, because they may never have been asked this question before, but to help the other spouse understand what that one spouse is looking for, you know, as a goal and interest. And once the spouses know their own goals and interests and know the others, and the team knows that, that's the basis for future meetings, is to work off of those goals and interests, and to go through the financial estate, to go through the parenting plan, knowing that we know what these guys want to see at the end of the day. We are drawing up a roadmap. Now in court, you really don't do that. You might have your own goals and interests, and you might testify to them in trial before a judge, but it's up to the judges if the judge really understands what that means to you and is able to craft an outcome that's satisfactory. In a collaborative case, the folks can create any sort of agreement as long as it's not illegal. And it may not be something that the court would have or have the time to look at. So focusing on the couple's goals and interests really is a benchmark and a roadmap that the court just doesn't have the capacity to do.
So people understand when you're saying goals and interests, give a few examples in the collaborative process of some goals and interests that would come up that the professional team could address and help the parties achieve.
Sure. So I want to compare it to when I was in litigation. People will come to me and would say, well, I want X amount of dollars of alimony. I don't know how they got that number, but they have a number in mind. In the collaborative process, it starts out not really with quantitative discussions, it's qualitative. So a lot of it is, instead of how much money do you need, how much alimony, the discussions are more, I want financial security. I want to make sure that I can make my bills. I want to make sure I see my children every day. I want to have long-term security. I want to live in this house with our children until they get to be adults. So these are now some really specific ideas that this couple has in mind. And now we kind of have not really numbers, but concepts. And now we can explore, well, what does financial security mean to you? And start to get into those discussions. And it's not starting out with a number and trying to justify it. Let's come up to that number, but let's first explore what those goals and what those important aspects that the couple is looking for. And that's really how a lot of our meetings start. And it's, every meeting we keep coming back to those goals and interests and reminding the couple, here's where you want to be, and here's where we're going. And that really helps to keep the couple focused in on what they want to see at the end of the process.
One of the terms that's used in the collaborative process is option building. So when you were talking about goals and exploring what the different parties' interests are in their goals, explain to the listeners what option building is.
Sure. So I'm going to give an example. Most cases, or a lot of the cases, involve a marital home. There's usually a mortgage. Let's use an example that there are children involved. So one of the goals is, well, I want to stay in the house with the children until they reach adulthood. Okay, well, let's look at some of those options. Does that mean, is there equity in the home? Does that mean that the other spouse is entitled to some of that equity? How are we going to do that? The other option is staying in the home, but maybe not dealing with the equity at this point. Maybe we'll deal with that somewhere down the road when you sell the house, if you're only going to stay in there, until the children are majority. Are you able to stay in the house? Let's look at that option. Is that even financially feasible? Let's not go down that road if the numbers aren't going to add up. So we start to put down, here's the goal, and here are some options, and are any of those options work? And if one or more of them does, we talk about with the other spouse, what's your goal with the house, and come up with options and see if those options line up for each of each other. So it's a good question, because starting out with the goals is great, but you really have to then start to drill down to see if in this particular case, in their particular circumstance, those goals are going to actually financially work out.
And so how does a couple determine if they're right for the collaborative process or right for out of court process?
Sure.
Give them some advice.
Yeah. So, my passion is always to help people to resolve cases out of court. And it's a discussion I have early on to explain each of the options. And it could be mediation, it could be one attorney handling the entire divorce and representing one of the parties. But to me, what I found in my experience is people have to be willing to be willing, is kind of how I look at it. I know people would rather not go to court, but are you willing to be open to different options? Because going to court, you're going to be locked into one option, and that's what the court says. But being out of court, you're going to have some decisions to make, and the other spouse is going to have some decisions to make. And are you the type of person that can work with an attorney to go over options and come up with the best option for this case, and understanding that you may not get everything that you want? You may have a checklist, but at the end of the day, are you willing to look at a situation and say, well, I didn't get everything I want, but I got what I needed, and this is a situation. Rolling Stones, yes. and I use that in my conversations. It's funny that you bring that up, and people can relate to that because everybody knows that song. But they have to really be willing to be open, and they may not know if they could, but just to say, yeah, you know what, I think I can. Let me work with you on that. Now, there are some people that are saying, at the end of the day, if I don't have this, then it's not going to work out. that's going to be a red flag for me. Not to shut it down, but let me explore that. Let me see, well, why is this so important, and why are you really dug in on that? So having a conversation to see how willing they are to be in a process where you have to be flexible, you have to know what your needs are, and you're willing to give up some of those wants that at the end of the day doesn't really get you to where you want to be.
So, what's your advice to people listening as to how to find other professionals, other peacemakers, um, who can help them resolve their case, their divorce, without ending up in court? When people are Googling or they're talking to their neighbor, how do they find a peacemaker versus somebody who's that's not their goal?
Sure. So there's a lot of information on the internet, and sometimes it's so overwhelming. You Google and you get stuff. People are buying spaces in Google to move up, and that's great. The easy, simple answer is to go to the Florida Academy of Collaborative Professionals website. Um, Everyone that's on that website is part of a local practice group, and they are committed to the collaborative process. Each of them have different experiences and different uh, levels of training, but everyone on there is trained as a collaborative professional, and that's the one-stop shopping. Is you can go there and really look at people. You have a whole website of individuals. Look at people in your area, look at people out of your area. With Zoom, professionals, we could be anywhere, but that's the one place that that people that are on there are in the collaborative process. They are peacemakers to a certain extent. Each of us have different levels of peacemaking, but that's a lot easier and a lot less overwhelming than just putting in. Even if you put in peaceful divorce, a peaceful divorce attorney, you don't know what Google is going to give you. Don't worry about Google. Go to the FAC website, and you'll find all the professionals you need.
Thank you. And what practice group or groups are you a member of?
Sure. So I am part of the Central Florida Collaborative Family Law Group, and I am also part of the South Florida Family Law Institute. Part of both groups. They're excellent groups, amazing professionals. I'm so grateful and honored to be able to work with them. So look at each of those groups, and you'll find a professional to work with.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Catherine.